Hello, Frizzle Fixies. Today, my review comes to you in the form of a game. I have 12 books I'm going to talk about today. They're all in here, and that will give us 4 rounds of 3, where I have to decide, out of 3 randomly chosen books, which one I would reread, which one I would rewrite, and which one I would recycle. Now, originally this game, instead of recycle, it was burn, but I like recycle better because it keeps on the read trend and also it has better connotations than burning books. So, round 1, we have Be the Serpent, Foundation, and Alloy of Law. Okay, easy decision first, reread Alloy of Law. Alloy of Law is the 4th book in the Mistborn universe and the 1st book of its Era 2, which kicks off the steampunk cowboy detective era. And my hot take is Alloy of Law is my favorite Mistborn book. Here's some things I appreciate about Alloy of Law. First, it's got that urban fantasy flavor of a detective who's down on their luck, dealing with their past trauma, trying to save the city but not sure if they really should. I like that angst and drama. But I also think one of the things that I most treasure about Alloy of Law is that it was originally intended to be a standalone, and it really does read as such. Now, it didn't end up being a standalone because there are lots more Era 2 books that follow it, but it was originally constructed as such, and I really like when a story wraps up nicely. Trust me, I love my series, but the more I read series, the more I realize that I don't like it when every book itself doesn't have its own contained story. It's like, why didn't you just put them all into the same story anyway? I also feel like if the story of a series just blends into all of the different books, there often ends up being a lot of fluff in every individual book that didn't really need to be there for the story to be told effectively. So Alloy of Law, it's got the nice tone going for it, it's got the nice plot structure going for it, and it also has some really nice characters. We've got 3 main characters, Wax, Wayne, and Marcy, and 2 of them have some pretty good plot arcs. I especially adore Wax's. He was a cowboy sheriff out in the Wild West, and then a combination of tragedy and duty called him back to the big city where he is now a politician. And that role doesn't always suit him, and he's trying to adjust to that at the same time that a lot of chaos is coming that they might really need a cowboy sheriff character to take care of. And I love that push and pull of his duty to being an uptight politician and also his duty to saving the day and helping out people with this skill set that he still has. It's so scrumptious, and I've read this book lots of times, and I just reread it again, and I would continue to reread it again and again and again and again. Now, for each of these books, I'm also going to give you what I rated it star rating wise and the book tone. What is a book tone? If you want a long explanation, I've made a video all about it, so I'll link that video in the footnotes. But here's the short version, is I have made a reader personality test in an effort to make it easier for people to find books that will work for them. It's color-coded like this. The dark, saturated colors are emotional books. The light, pale colors are intellectual books. And then the color is what drives the book. So if it's red, it's a plot-driven book. If it's blue, it's a character-driven book. And if it's yellow, it's an atmosphere-driven book. And then any mixes of the colors are mixes on those categories. So Alloy of Law, I rated 5 stars, and it is a Gainsborough Gray book, meaning it's intellectually driven and a mix of atmosphere, character, and plot focus. Okay, next. I don't really know how I would rewrite either of these, but we gotta choose one of them. Okay, I think I've got a better idea of how to rewrite Foundation. I did not really want to read Foundation. I highly suspected that it would not be a new favorite book for me, but it was voted for me by my YouTube community. If you want to participate in those polls, there's one every month, and that is linked in the footnotes. But Foundation was fine. I rated it 3 stars. What is this book? It's one of the sci-fi classics. And the premise of this book is there were some really smart scientists who used math and psychology, etc., to be able to predict the future for thousands of years, and they saw the fall and coming of empires. And then you're following characters who are unwittingly part of this chain of events. Now, following characters is a little bit of a stretch phrase, honestly, because we're always time jumping, different characters, different times. It's more of an exploration of the general idea of what if we could predict the future, and then these little vignettes of different intergalactic politics things. And it was like, okay, I wasn't completely bored, but also, like, if you're gonna keep my attention, you need some characters and some plot. So we would rewrite Foundation by giving it those. Bonus points if we could gender bend some of the characters to make them women. There's like one woman character in this book, and she is whiny and is pacified by pretty necklaces. So we're following a bunch of different timelines and things happening. I think I would at least divide those numbered by 2 and then spend more time actually fleshing out what the characters want, what they're working for, give them individual quests, etc. And we can still span time and still span characters, but like, let's make this a little bit more coherent and focused, please. Foundation is undoubtedly chiffon yellow, which is intellectually driven and atmosphere focused. It's all about the ideas, not the characters, not the plot. But one of the things that's really interesting to me is those ideas. This book was written in the 1950s when I'm sure using math and psychology to predict the future was like, wow, we could totally do that. And it's interesting that while I was reading this book, I was really reminded of a book by John Green, The Abundance of Catherines, where they're also trying to use math and psychology to predict the future. And the conclusion in that book is more like, well, that's stupid and bogus. People have free will. And reading these two books kind of in tandem would be a really interesting interdiscussion, I think, between modernist, wow, science is so cool kind of themes, and postmodernism, but science can't answer all of the questions kind of themes. Yep, that was really heavy-duty literature analysis right there. Back to your regularly scheduled programming of silly games. Which leaves us with recycling Be the Serpent. Unfortunately, because I rated this 4 stars and I liked it. But we're doing forced ranking and one of these has to go. Be the Serpent is the 16th book in the October Day series, which is a fantasy series following a spunky with a big attitude fairy knight, October Day. And in this book, I was definitely impressed by the big melodramatic plot twists and reveals, but a little non-impressed with how those seem to be a little underutilized. Like, could we twist the knife in a little bit more on how much this betrayal and reveal and twist actually is? I think this series is really going to appeal to people who love a snarky narrator, who love a warrior narrator, but one that can still feel things and have regular relationships and isn't entirely emotionally closed off kind of style. And I enjoy those kind of characters, but I'm not in love with them. I rated Be the Serpent 4 stars, and it is a Vermilion Red book, which means it's emotionally driven and plot focused. Okay, round 2! Okay, we've got Soul Taken. Very excited about that one. Hopefully I don't have to burn it or something. Lore Olympus. Okay, I'm probably recycling this one. And Batman Wayne Family Adventures. Let's get the easiest decision out of the way. We are recycling Lore Olympus. Lore Olympus is a webtoon-based graphic novel. It is loosely a retelling of Hades and Persephone, but like emphasis on loosely. The basic plot is that Persephone is a very sheltered, naive girl who has gotten a scholarship once in her life and some sort of Olympus college, and also coming out into like the big city for. And I have heard so many positive reviews of Lore Olympus, so I was excited to read it. And I read this on the Webtoon app, which is free if you want to read this. And I read through what would be in the graphic novel collections around volume 3. And like, I kept waiting for it to get good, because I've heard nothing but positive reviews for this, and it never did. I think that this story is just too meandering for my taste. It's just random events happening, overarching plot of no hidden narrative, or slightly meandering we're running into Apollo who's a jerk, etc. Be forgiven if you have some focused, good character arcs, but this is also terribly meandering in the character arcs. If you just want a fluffy, occasionally kind of serious webcomic with lots of highly saturated colors and maybe get some laughs and smiles out of, then it's okay. But if you're looking for like a captivating story, then I would not recommend this. I rated Lore Olympus 2 stars, and it is a Resolution Blue book, which is an emotional character focus book. Okay, which one of these would I rewrite? Wayne Family Adventures. This is another webtoon. I've been starting to get into webtoons, and it's kind of interesting that they got pitted against each other. I love this webtoon. Every week, when a new episode comes up, I am reading it. I'm excited. I have read a fair number of Batman comics, and I gotta say that this is my favorite Batman comic. And it really depends on what you're looking for in Batman comics. Wayne Family Adventures is exactly what it sounds like. It's very focused on the Wayne family, the Bat family, all the different Robins, all the Batgirls, all the other sidekicks that have different names. And every little episode is a different character having a little character arc, learning a lesson, generally working through their emotional problems, because if you hang out around Batman, either you started with emotional problems and they got worse, or you didn't and you got some. But I would rewrite Wayne Family Adventures because I think that the cast of characters is a little too big to keep track of them all. And like, that's a lot of main characters, and I kind of think that some of them should just be like, cut out of the story. Now, there are some good things about having such a big cast of characters, such as we get to be at least kind of racially diverse compared to maybe the average Batman comic. I think we would cut, spoiler, Stephanie Brown, Dick Grayson, probably all the Alfred focus, definitely the Bat Cow episode. But the real strength of Wayne Family Adventures is even if we have such a big cast, it's not that hard to keep track of all of them because the characterization of each individual character is so strong. I rated this 4 stars, and it's a resolution blue book, emotional and character. Which leaves me rereading Soul Taken. This is the 13th book in the Mercy Thompson series, so it's a little hard for me to talk specifically about it at this point, but here is what I will say. The writing was engrossing. I picked this up and I did not put it down, metaphorically. These books have just nailed the perfect pacing. Not too fast, not too slow, lots of interesting moments and reveals happening. But this is also like the first Mercy Thompson book that I've read just by itself. I binged books 1 through 12, and then I waited for book 13 to come out, which it did. And I think that this is one of those series that's really much better binged. Because like I was talking about earlier with my discussion of Alloy of Law, the books all kind of bleed into each other. There are mysteries and reveals that get set up for books and books and books, and then sort of revealed for books and books and books, slowly unfolded. And if you're only reading one of the books, it's not as satisfying. There has been a mystery character throughout this series. He was introduced around book 9, I think, with amnesia. And then we've been slowly getting clues and trying to figure out what is this character's backstory. And then finally in this book, book 13, we get it. And then it's not relevant to the plot of this book. So like, was I excited to find out this guy's secrets? Yes. But then by the end of the book, I'm like, couldn't you have just waited to tell us until it became relevant to the larger plot action of the book? Because then the payoff would have actually felt like satisfying. This book is great at delivering payoff in an entertaining way. They're fun to read, but it's even funner if you get to binge them. Which is why this book is great for reread, because once the entire series is out, you betcha I'm gonna be rereading, binging the entire series. I rated Soul Taken 4 stars, and it is a Byzantium purple book, which means it's emotional and a mix of plot and character driven. Round 3, Queen of Nothing, Network Effect, and War for the Oaks. We don't have anything lower than 4 stars in this round. Okay, what is the easiest decision here? I think I have an idea for rewriting War for the Oaks, so we're gonna do that one. Whatever else you do with War for the Oaks, you have to respect its position as a genre giant. It is one of the foundations of the urban fantasy genre. And I gotta admit it, I was a little apprehensive to read this book because of that. Because in my experience, when you go and read classics of the genre, it's usually that the genre has far surpassed that foundation that they're building upon. Thank you to the foundation, but we have moved past you and improved. But for War for the Oaks, this has risen to the top of some of my all-time favorite books. It is just absolutely jaw-droppingly fantastic. But also for War for the Oaks, I tried to read this book like 8 years ago. I made it 2 chapters in and then I gave up because it was boring. So I missed out on a great book back then, and then I finally retried it now and loved it to death. So if we're rewriting War for the Oaks, we're going to make the beginning a little bit more exciting and snappy. What is this book about, you may be asking at this point? War for the Oaks follows 20-something Eddie, who's part of a band, but her band is falling apart due to the people in it not being the best. So she quits the band, dumps her boyfriend, is ready for a new thing, when suddenly the Fae invade her life and have chosen her to be part of their little war because they need a mortal human to make some of their wartime magics work. But then the Fae War doesn't actually kick off until like halfway through the book. And though we do get some fairly nice character development and relationship development in that first half of the book, it's also you're just like waiting for this promised action to happen. Like you were promised it from the get-go and then it doesn't happen. So I would say that we gotta have that first battle like ASAP. Like, she gets conscripted and first battle immediately. And it can just be like a small little one. Like, it doesn't have to be anything huge climactic. But giving us a little bit of that, I think that will make her relationships with the fairies even more fraught, because she'll have all of this emotional baggage from being in the war from the very beginning, instead of acquiring it like halfway through the book. But the character work on this book is absolutely fantastic. I love how this book is punky and romantic and fun. I love Emma Bull's writing. I wish she had more books. I've read all of her books now, and I loved all of them. I rated War for the Oaks 5 stars. And this book is Jade Green, which is emotional and a mix of atmosphere and character focused. Okay, next, Network Effect versus Queen of Nothing. The reread is going to have to go to Network Effect, which is book 5 of the Murderbot Diaries series. And book 5 has an interesting part in the Murderbot Diaries series. This series follows Murderbot, a sentient robot who is trying to find its place in the world after breaking free from corporate slavery. And all of the books in this series are novellas, except for book 5, which is a full-length novel. So you get a lot more plot in this book. There's a lot more interesting mystery and action and moving pieces to this one. And for that reason, it's my favorite of the series. They've all received 5 stars from me. But book 5, that one takes the cake. Also, I've reread this book like twice in the past month, so it obviously has some reread potential here. And it is Thistle Purple, meaning it's intellectually driven and a mix of plot and character focus. Which leaves me to recycle Queen of Nothing. So this is the Folk of the Air trilogy, starting with Cruel Prince, and it's kind of interesting that I rated both books 1 and 3, I skipped book 2. It's part of an experiment reading series out of order, and if you want to hear more about that, I'll link my explanation video for that in the footnotes. The interesting thing is that I rated both of these books 4 stars, and yet both of them ended up being recycled. I really enjoyed it, but I'm not invested in it. I'm just kind of done. So why is that? These books are fast-paced and intense. The stakes are pretty much always life and death. In this series, we follow Jude, a normal human girl who has grown up in fairy elf land. And these are the types of fairy elves that are kind of mean and trickstery and can't lie, but are always telling you untruths anyway through clever wordplay. And Jude is ambitious. She is brash. She is strong. And she makes for a very engaging protagonist. She is at the helm of this series, pulling strings and taking names. I'm rooting for her because of her ambition. I'm terrified of her because of her brashness. But I don't think I ever really cared about her or her romance or her quest on a really deep level. I mean, I was entertained by it. I was hooked by it. I would definitely recommend these books to people who are looking for a fast, exciting read. But I think once I'm done with them, I'm ready to recycle these books. I rated Queen of Nothing 4 stars. And it is Anchor Gray, meaning emotional and a mix of atmosphere, character, and plot focused. Round 4, last round. We got Final Heir, Uncanny Times, and The Law. I mean, on my notes, I've got 3 star, 4 star, 5 star, so you think it'd be easy just to be like, okay, reread, rewrite, recycle, but I think I'm not going to make those decisions at all. I think I'm going to recycle the book I rated 5 stars, which is The Law. The Law is a new novella in the Dresden Files series. And I am obsessed with the Dresden Files series. I love the characters, I love the plot lines, I love theorizing about it. I am so on board with all of it. But I do think that this novella had some real weaknesses. If you want to hear detailed, I've got an entire review video for it linked in the footnotes. But as a summary, I feel like this novella focused so much on this little detective case, this little plot line, and it didn't really give us any character arc. And if this short story was part of like an anthology collection that gave us a big character arc throughout the entire book, it'd be fine. Or if this novella was much shorter into like a real short story, I think that would also be fine because there wouldn't be as much lacking if it was just a little quick thing. But it's just that awkward length where I feel like we do need some more character exploration here that we didn't get. So I rated this book 5 stars, but I would recycle it. I don't think it really adds anything of emotional substance to the series. And this was New York Pink, intellectual and plot focused. Okay. I think continuing on the ridiculousness, I'm going to reread my 3-star book, Final Heir. This is the 15th and final book of the Jane Yellowrock series. And it's the only Jane Yellowrock book that I have read. Yes, the experiment of reading books out of order has gotten a little out of control, but I'm enjoying it still. So why would I reread this book? I would reread this book after I have read books 1 through 14 of the series, which I am planning on doing because this book was good enough to make me want to do that. But I think a lot of the power of this book for its readers is going to be for readers who have watched the progression of the characters, who have watched their growth and their relationships change until we have this finale here. Like, even me, the dum-dum who has no context for this book, could tell that this was the cap and the end to a lot of ongoing plot lines and character arcs. But they just didn't pack an emotional punch for me because I wasn't in the loop. Jane Yellowrock is a vampire hunter, shapeshifter, very embroiled in all of the vampire and werewolf, etc. dragons politics. She's another one of those warrior snarky protagonists. I rated this book 3 stars and it is Thistle Purple, meaning intellectual and a mix of character and plot focused. Which leaves me to rewrite Uncanny Times, which is a little difficult because I don't currently have an idea of how to rewrite it. Okay, I've reread my notes and my review of this book and I have an idea now. This book takes place in 1913 United States and it's about 2 siblings who are the monster hunters. And in this book, they are pushed to the limit of their investigative and monster hunting skills as they go hunt down a monster that presumably killed their extended relative uncle. And my favorite part of this book was the push and pull between these 2 siblings. We have Rosemary and Aaron. And they don't always agree on how monster hunting should be done. They don't always agree on what is good and what is bad. And those little disagreements and fights between them were intriguing and entertaining. And if I was rewriting this book, I would add in more character-based conflict. Because the main conflict of this book is hunting down and killing the monster. But the characters are certainly fleshed out enough that we could give them more focused and interesting and dynamic character arcs. Which at the moment, they don't super have. I would add in some more confrontations and conflict in this story that pushes them to their respective limits. Not just with their vocational skills, but with their emotional skills. And I have a video review on this book if you want to hear more details about my thoughts. I rated this book 4 stars and it is Gainsborough Grey, meaning intellectual and a mix of atmosphere, character, and plot focus. And those are those 12 books! Thank you for watching and I look forward to chatting with you in the comments.